Senator for Alaska.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to be able to complete my remarks before the 1:45 vote.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I want to compliment my friend from Delaware. He and I do work together on a number of issues. We're going to have to part ways on this really important issue for me today. I do want to just make a comment to his comments. I know there's no group that has suffered more at the hands of the Biden administration, executive orders, and far-left environmental groups than Alaska Natives. I know that for a fact. So I would invite my colleague to come up to Alaska with me, and I'll take you to these communities that can't do anything, no jobs, no nothing, because every far-left group in America wants to shut down their opportunity. It happens all the time. So I'd love to bring him and others up to Alaska to let them see that. When people talk Alaska Native groups and try to speak for them, unfortunately some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle do that. No way. You're not going to get away with that on this one. So, Mr. President, we have a resolution that we're going to be voting on here in about 10 minutes. And this is my Congressional Review Act resolution. I've spoken on the Senate floor a number of times about this. The CRA today, what we call a CRA, is quite simple. It would rescind the new Biden administration Nepa rule, that's the National Environmental Policy Act rule, promulgated in April, which will clearly have the impact of slowing down the construction of literally every infrastructure project in America. The construction of roads, bridges, wind, solar, hydro, heck, even chip fabrication facilities, critical mineral projects. Pretty much everything is going to be slowed down by this. Pretty straightforward. Our resolution just says we want to rescind the resolution, the regulation from April. But, Mr. President, the vote on this is much more significant than just one Senate resolution. It is a test for all senators on two key issues. First, are you really serious about permitting reform so that America can build the infrastructure that everybody knows our country desperately needs? And second, who do you stand with? The working men and women of our great nation who build things, or the far-left elite special interest groups who want to shut this country down? So let's take these two issues in order, Mr. President. First, permitting reform. My colleagues know this is a passion of mine. Actually, it's a passion of a number of senators. It sounds wonky, sounds boring, sounds technical, permitting reform. But in reality, it is so important for our nation, for every community in America, for the dignity of work, for good jobs in this country. And here's why. We used to build big things in America. Engineering marvels, on time, on budget, the source of pride for literally all Americans, the envy of the world. We did that all the time. Think about it. Empire State Building, 410 days to build. Pentagon, biggest building in the world, 16 months. A little closer to home for me, the 1,700-mile Alaska-Canada highway through some of the world's most rugged terrain, 11 months. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline System, feeding a hungry nation with energy from Alaska to the lower 48. 800 miles, 70,000 sections of 48-inch pipe joined and welded together, 3 mountain ranges, 800 riverbeds from the Arctic Ocean to the Pacific, 3 years. Incredible. And why did we do this? Why can we do this? Why could we still do this in America? Because we have the best workers, most productive workforce in the world. But unfortunately, those days of building great things in America in an efficient, timely fashion are gone. We all know it. Every mayor knows it. Every city council member knows it. Every governor knows it, and yes, every U.S. senator knows it. We see it every day. We don't see the great building of things, we see the other things. 8 to 9 years to permit a bridge. Yes, in America, to permit a bridge. 9 to 19 years to permit and build a highway. The Gross Water Reservoir in Colorado for clean water took 20 years to permit. The Kensington Mine, a gold mine in Alaska that is now employing hundreds of people, average wage $110,000, really good jobs, took 20 years to permit with litigation. Mr. President, this is killing our country, our economy, and good jobs. And we all know it, and we all know the reason for it. Every single senator knows the reason. A broken federal permitting system that has turned into a labyrinth of red tape that invites and incentivizes delay and litigation by groups whose goal is to shut down the building of our country. Everybody knows it. It is a fact. Now, how can I be so sure? Because everybody in this body likes to talk about the need for permitting reform so we can get back to building this country and putting Americans who do these hard jobs to work. Last year, I worked hard with a number of my colleagues on the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which I voted on. And in the EPW committee, my colleague from Delaware is still here, we got some important permitting reforms in it. That was good. Not enough, in my view, but it was a good start. And today, as we consider Senator Schumer's reconciliation bill, which I will oppose, we are all now being assured that Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, and even the President are fully committed to additional robust permitting legislation in the fall, sometime in the future, once their massive tax and spending reconciliation bill passes. So everybody's talking about permitting. We all know we need it. But here's what happened, Mr. President. In the meantime, between the important but not as ambitious as I would have liked permitting reforms in the infrastructure bill last fall and all the talk of permitting today, something happened. What happened? The Biden administration promulgated a new Nepa rule supported by far-left environmental groups that will clearly have the effect of slowing down permitting of infrastructure, inviting endless litigation and putting people out of work. And Mr. President, no one who has seriously looked at this broad, nebulous, and destructive Biden rule disputes this. I've read it. It is a delay bomb for infrastructure. So here's the first test. It was noted in a very good recent Wall Street Journal editorial this week. It's this: if my colleagues, all my colleagues, but especially my Democrat colleagues, really support permitting reform so we can get back to building America, let's get rid of this destructive, overbroad, vague, litigation-inviting rule. Vote yes on my resolution. Right now, 50 Republican senators are co-sponsors of this resolution. To my Democrat colleagues, join us. Do the right thing for America. We all know that that's the right thing for America. So here's the second test. I ask this to join us in doing the right thing for America. Join us in doing the right thing for the working Americans and building trades who heroically built this country and continue to do so today. Now, Mr. President, I love this photo. It's iconic. It says so much. I've had it on the floor a number of times. But these are the kind of men, women, who built this great nation, hard-working Americans doing incredible stuff. That's a lunch break, by the way, in the building of the Empire State Building. This shouldn't be hard to support the men and women who build this country. And this shouldn't be hard for my Democratic colleagues who often claim to support the working men and women of America. And in the past, I certainly will acknowledge that has been true. But today, and I've learned this lesson the hard way back home in Alaska, today, whenever national Democrats have to choose between the interests of the far-left elite environmental groups and these men and women who produce things and build things in America, they sell out the working class every time. Every time. I see this every day in my state. Now, I mentioned this in a Commerce Committee hearing a few months ago. One of my Democratic colleagues, a friend, and almost everybody on the other side of the aisle is a good friend of mine, he got upset with me. He said, "Hey, that's not true. You shouldn't have said that." Well, here's what I say. All right, prove it. Today's vote is a chance to prove me wrong or prove me right. And here's why. And this is really important, Mr. President. Let's look at the lineup of the groups who support my resolution today and those who oppose it. Now, this is just some of the 50 groups in America that are supporting my resolution that we're going to vote on here in a couple minutes. And I'm very proud of this incredible, broad and diverse group of Americans who are saying vote yes on the Sullivan resolution. And they all have one thing in common, Mr. President. They produce things and they build things for this great nation. Take a look at this chart. It's kind of hard to decipher who's on it. Let me give you a couple. American Farm Bureau, so all our farmers. Cattlemen, all our cattlemen, farmers and ranchers. Ag retailers. National Sandstone Gravel Association. These are guys who build infrastructure. Same with the Associated General Contractors of America. Same with the U.S. Chamber. Same with the National Association of Manufacturers. Same with the American Mining Association. Of course, the entire energy sector is supporting this. Groups from Alaska and resource development sector, groups from West Virginia, groups from Ohio. This is a huge, broad-based group of supporters. But, Mr. President, I will tell you this. I am most proud of the strong, robust support for my resolution from organizations that represent the men and women who build stuff and keep our country's economy humming. Take a look at some of them. The North American Building Trades Unions. That's all the unions that build things. The Laborers International, LIUNA. That's the largest construction trade union in the country. The operating engineers. These guys do everything. Another trade union. The Alaska Teamsters, the Alaska AFL-CIO. These are the great men and women who built this country and built the middle class of America. I have the utmost respect for them, and indeed, my family is part of this labor union heritage. My great-grandfather was one of the co-founders of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. That's a source of pride in my family. But here's the question. Why are they all strongly supporting my resolution to rescind the Biden NEPA regulations? And it's a simple answer, Mr. President, because they know that these are job-killing regs. They know that these are the type of regs in America that delay or indefinitely stop the building of infrastructure in our country. And their members are the ones who suffer the most. And the dignity of work that we all say we care about also suffers. Don't take my word for it, Mr. President. Here's what some of the leaders of these organizations have said, and they're great Americans. Let me begin with Terry O'Sullivan, the head of the Laborers International. This was his letter to the Biden White House when they were contemplating this rule in April. Just take a look. He said the rollback of updates to Nepa reinstate burdensome requirements that will cause excessive permit delays and allow project adversaries, far-left environmental groups, to use frivolous lawsuits, which they always do, to disrupt or upend long overdue construction. Once again, communities in need of vital infrastructure and the hard-working men and women who build America will be waiting as project details are subjected to onerous reviews. That was Terry O'Sullivan saying, don't issue the rule. They ignored him. They ignored him because they chose the interest of the far-left environmentalists. Here's James Callahan writing in support of today's resolution. He's the head of the operating engineers. You want to talk about great unions, LIUNA, operating engineers, these are the men and women who build things. This is an incredible statement, and he nails it. And this guy really knows what he's talking about. Since its modest beginnings, NEPA has evolved into a massive edifice capable of destroying project after project, job after job in virtually every sector of the economy. Dilatory strategies employed by the project opponents, far-left environmental groups, frequently exploit provisions in NEPA, weighing down projects, frustrating communities, and raising costs to the point that many applicants, whether public or private, simply walk away. And Mr. President, when they walk away, kills jobs. So that's from James Callahan's letter, one of the 50 groups that's supporting this resolution. So, Mr. President, the men and women who build our nation support my resolution, like so many groups. So who is opposed? Well, it's pretty simple. It's pretty obvious. It's the usual groups of far-left, coastal elite, environmental groups who I see every day in Alaska trying to crush jobs and stop infrastructure and put people out of work. I'll just give a few. You know, it's the usual suspects: Center for Biological Diversity, Earth Justice, Code Pink. Not sure why they jumped in on this, but Friends of the Earth. By the way, if you're watching this speech, go take a look at some of those websites and see what they stand for. So that's who's opposed, Mr. President. Mr. President, one more point that I think is important to raise. And to be honest, there's something else going on here. Not only is there always opposition by those groups to building anything in America, including my resolution, regardless of how many pink slips result from the actions of these groups to shut down things, there is sometimes a subtle and not so subtle condescension looking down on the Americans who build things. Workers can feel it, workers can sense it. No one epitomizes this condescending, elitist attitude towards American workers than this guy. You might remember last year around this time he was asked if the Biden administration's Green New Deal policies would put American coal and natural gas workers out of work and end their livelihoods. John Kerry responded, quote, "What President Biden wants to do is make sure that those folks, men and women who build stuff, coal miners, natural gas workers, have better choices, that they can be the people who go to work to make solar panels." Sure, better choices from a guy who flies in a jet, owned a 76-foot yacht, several mansions, and has the carbon footprint of a small nation. Yet he tells American energy workers to go make solar panels when the Biden administration's regulations are killing their jobs. So I'll end with this, Mr. President. Back to the workers. When you're voting today, keep the heritage of these men and women in mind. The Biden NEPA rule that we're trying to rescind today will kill jobs. I'm sure it's already killed jobs. That's why we need to rescind it. This should be an easy vote for all my Senate colleagues today. If you really care about permitting reform so we can get back to building things in America, you should vote yes. If you really put the interests of working men and women like these incredible Americans over those of elite, far-left environmental groups, you should vote yes. And if you truly support the men and women who build this country, feed this country, and grow this country, you should vote yes. I yield the floor and ask for the yeas and nays on this resolution.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays 47, and the joint resolution is passed.
I just want to thank my colleagues for the vote that just occurred here on the floor of the United States Senate, a bipartisan victory, 50 to 47, on the Congressional Review Act that I had put forward with all of my Republican colleagues to rescind the onerous, job-killing Biden administration rule that came out in April that would make it harder to build things in America, would make it harder to employ people, especially our incredibly productive American workers. So that just passed. That was a repudiation of the Biden White House in a bipartisan vote on the Senate floor. And here's the thing, Madam President, even my Senate colleagues, because I was working the vote pretty hard down there in the well, even my Senate colleagues who voted against it, several of them came up to me and said, you know what, you're right. We really got to fix Nepa. It's killing the country. It's killing our ability to do anything. So that was an important vote, but a good conversation is starting here. We have the best workers in the world. If we let them build, we can do great things again in terms of building this country and not let red tape, far-left environmental groups, regulations, endless litigation stop us. So I also want to thank, Madam President, all the groups that supported this resolution. I had a bigger sign down on the Senate floor when I was giving an earlier speech, but this group, the groups that were supporting this legislation, very diverse, over 50 groups, men and women who produce things, grow things, build the country. I want to thank them for their great support of this Congressional Review Act that just passed. I really want to do a shout out to the building trades, the laborers, operating engineers, the trade unions that are doing such a great job building this country and want to work. They know these regulations are killing their workers' ability to get good jobs. We have a long way to go to fix the broken system of permitting in America and the endless litigation by environmental lawyers who want to stop everything. But today was an important start and an important vote on the floor of the Senate showing America that a bipartisan group of senators will stand up to these far-left groups and say, hey, you know what? We got to build. We need to build. And that was the message here. We're going to try and move this in the House and get it on President Biden's desk. He says he's, blue-collar Joe. Well, let's see if he's blue-collar Joe when this comes on his desk and he would veto or not veto something that all the building trades in America support. I yield the floor.